There we go. I see the record. It is recording now. Sorry about that. I thought I hit that at the beginning.
It's just now, like the share is not dark.
Right.
It's telling me to open my systems. So.
Open system preference.
Yep, and I did.
Close the recorder window.
Okay, I'll close that. Yeah, sorry, everybody. I mean, I'm ready to go if we can.
Yeah, we'll get there. So yeah, now that I have made you the host, I cannot share either. So, but you're saying that you can't.
You know, it's light. It's not dark. I clicked on it. It said go to systems preferences, which is what I'm doing. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Maybe it's because my Zoom app is still on.
I see.
Okay. All right. Zoom a web. Okay. Just a second. So they want my password, of course. Unlock. Okie dokie. All righty. It's still not.
Yeah, the share button isn't highlighted. It's dark.
Yeah.
This is
okay. I'm going through everything here. Warning. La la la. I don't have a to worry about. Because it says allow the apps below to record the contents of your screen, and so I'm clicking on it, and I'd had it clicked too. So. Oh, until it is quit. Okay. It says it won't be able to do it until I quit. And it's supposed to end event, and I'm sure I'll go away, right?
Yeah, maybe so.
Keep this event running. I'll click on that. Choose from panel. Select a new host. Panelists. I said, okay, I got leave event. No, it's not allowing me to share the screen.
Is it possible for you to email it to me, and then we can make me the host and I can share it?
Is
it emailable?
1.22 gigabytes.
Yeah.
I doubt that. I did all the stuff they told me to do. Choose your list. Okay, select a new host. Keep this event running.
Alternatively, is this the screen behind you? Did you say is the presentation too?
Oh, I could do it on there.
Why don't we?
Unless okay, sure.
Why don't we just do that? Because then we can at least see
fine.
something.
You're brilliant. You're brilliant. Okay. Yeah, it's right here. Why didn't this work? I hate when technology doesn't work. Because there we go.
I always feel so smart when it works and then it doesn't.
Well, we've been doing this for a year and a half. It's not like this is new.
Awesome.
Never did this type of.
Okay, so let's shift us around here. Chris, can you move?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you pull the chair? I'm in half PJs here, guys. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Can you guys?
We can see almost all. There we go. We can see everything.
Okay. So, and Chris and we're here. Okay. So, that's us. Maritime Heritage Minnesota. We are the only underwater archaeologists in Minnesota that do this. This is what we do for a living. This is not a hobby, as most people think it is. Believe me, we don't get paid enough for this to be a hobby. Anyway, so we are basically, we're not obviously work for the state. We're not part of the Office of State Archaeologists, but most maritime questions do come to us, even from the OSA. So we're the only ones in the state that do this, and we are licensed to do this. If you want to do underwater archaeology in Minnesota, you need to get a license from the OSA. There's different kinds of those. But anyway, what we're talking about today is the problems we run into in conserving and preserving our finite maritime cultural resources. That's part of our mission statement: nautical, cultural, maritime resources. We'll go to the next slide. That's us. We're a small group, Chris and I, and volunteers.
And the cats.
And the cats. Freddie Mercury and Roddy McKay are the most important because they're our mascots, and they work on their own computers. They've got laptops, so they're the best. But we got a few volunteer divers, plus our very small board of Mike, Steve, and Deb. And Mike is chair of our board. Also, we keep our boat at his house on Lake Minnetonka when we're working there, so we like that. We got a free boathouse all year this year. It's great. So small group, for volunteer divers and us, and of course, Chris and I are certified divers, and we have master's degrees in underwater archaeology, and I have a PhD in maritime Egyptology. So we do know what we're doing. A little bit definitions, because I think for this conference, most people aren't archaeologists, they're historians or other. And so just take a quick look at this. You know, archaeology, we document stuff that people make. Now, underwater archaeology is a subset of archaeology, where we use sonar to locate anomalies, and then we decide after diving what those anomalies are, whether they're whether they're wrecks or other stuff. It just depends. Nautical archaeology, maritime terrestrial archaeology are all subsets of archaeology and of underwater archaeology because they deal with maritime objects, sites, sometimes they're dry. We've got dry nautical sites, partially dry nautical sites. We're going to show you one of those. Maritime archaeology can be the maritime related artifacts and or wrecks themselves, depending on what's on them. It can be on an island. So it's various and sundry different things. And industrial archaeology is kind of a related field. Yeah. Okay. So again, the methodology we use is modified terrestrial techniques. Remote sensing survey is our idea of transects, for shovel testing. That's what we do. And then once we do the sonar survey, we analyze that data, look for wrecks, look for anything that might be human made. And believe me, we've dove on enough rocks and vegetation to last us a lifetime. Yeah. I mean, sometimes Lake Waconia, everything looked like a wreck and it was all weeds.
That was quite an eye opener because we had a lot of good sonar targets that just turned out to be weeds. So.
And we did 7 dives in one day and got nothing for it but a bunch of weeds. So Chris and I together were the only ones. Thank God we didn't waste any time for the volunteers.
Eventually we did find a pontoon.
Yes, we did. There is one wreck in Lake Waconia. But document using SCUBA, that's our phase 1. We test pre-disturbance. We do phase 2 excavations. We did one this year. That is off, sometimes warranted, but most times isn't. We don't do that unless we really need to. And then phase 3 excavation, where we collect artifacts. We've never done one underwater in Minnesota. We've done them in other states when we were in grad school and doing other projects, but not here in Minnesota. And then underwater archaeological theory, the interpretation of archaeological data using a maritime framework that takes into account the site's submerged history, in addition to any dry history that may be available through historical research. Sonar data also undergoes analysis using underwater archaeological theory. Is this a boat? Is it, a hot water heater? We have found those too. So, just some stats before MHM started working in Minnesota in 2005. There were only 18 wrecks that the state quote unquote recognized, meaning that they had site numbers. And of course, there's more than that.
And half of those were in Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah, or 6 of them.
Six of them.
Yeah, but the rest are in Lake Superior and a couple of Burnside, like that sort of thing. But right now, to date, we've identified 142 wrecks since we started working in 2010, 2011. We actually started 2008, so actually it's 2008, but 142 wrecks. We were going to do a diving project this fall, but we didn't get the funding, so that's a bummer. But we got 17 anomalies in that project that we know are wrecks from the sonar so good. So add that to that 159 wrecks. Technically, we haven't identified 17 of them. Dozens of maritime archaeological sites, river landings, ice hockey rink in Lake Johanna that sunk because they didn't get out to the water close early enough. Fish houses, pontoons, water ski courses, concrete anchors, mill and river landings up in the Mississippi River, steamboat crib there as well.
There are more boat lists on the lake than you'd think.
Boat lists blow into the lake all the time. Lake Minnetonka has 12, I think. I mean, and dozens of other objects, including a pre-1910 Blatz beer, which was fun. That's in Tonka Bay, still sitting there where we found it. And a concrete cauldron in Lake Pulaski full of burned wood and 2 unopened beer bottles. That's Corona and Bud Light, still sitting there. Very cold bottles, but those artifacts, it must have sunk when the ice went out and they left that thing on there for some reason. So underwater archaeology, just quickly, preservation issues, real and present threats. There's looters, boaters, fishing line, well-meaning but ill-informed lake bottom cleaners. What they consider junk is artifactual most often. Anchors, deep water prop wash. Natural processes, storm and high winds are nemesis. Ice damage if it's a shallow site. Erosion of sand with using sand and water. Tree falls from rivers and lakes. Zebra mussels, vegetation, including Eurasian water milfoil, which actually has been getting better. Lake Minnetonka, we haven't found any Eurasian in a long time. We've got the natural stuff, but starry stonewort, like Medicine Lake, is full of this stuff. It actually disrupts our sonar. And warm water is bad for stuff that cold water is better, just like a meat lover. Nature of the erection sites, meaning if they're made out of wood, metal, which is steel or aluminum, and fiberglass. their possession, their site positions, the wreck and site positions. Where are they in the lake? Well, the depth. How are they sitting? Are they under going to destroy themselves under their own weight? You know, that sort of thing. So, okay.
This is basically what we do when we come to a lake. We'll first do a sonar survey of the shoreline. We'll do one circuit around, and then we'll run transects back and forth about 200 feet apart. And
Depending.
Yeah, depending. The direction we choose is dependent on the weather conditions. We'd like to go with or against the wind, because that way we're less affected by wave action, and we can keep a straighter course.
Yeah, and that's Anomaly 51, our research boat, named from our trustee, Steve Hack, wanted to call it Anomaly 51. So we did. It's kind of neat. An issue, propeller wash and boatways. If the top picture here, you see this stripe here, that's prop wash. That's actually a boat that crossed in front of us, and it was so big or had such a big prop, or the wake runners, the wakeboarder guys, their boats are designed to create wakes, not make them minimal. So that's what we get.
So yeah, that disturbance lasts a long time. It can go down fairly deep.
We can be 10 minutes later and still it's there. But with this one, you see this bottom picture here, that's 60 feet. This particular wake went down and hit the bottom of the lake at 60 feet. And not that, I mean, that's the same wake. That is, see right here, that's a stripe, that's the down image of the sonar, that's the side image. And we run into that problem all the time, every day. And this other image, the more greeny one, that, you see it's cavitating. See that wobble in there? That wobble is because a wake from a boat is hitting us sideways, and it makes us do this so that our sonar does that. And it ruins our picture.
It creates a washboard effect that isn't very good.
So it hinders our preservation efforts by the fact that we can't find stuff when it's a big mess. So 60 feet, people. If something's 20 feet or 10 feet below, people might be still going slower in shallower water sometimes, but still the prop is going to hit the bottom and whoosh, and that's an issue, big issue. We're going to start up in the headwaters, Mississippi River. As David mentioned, we have gotten couple of vessels on the wrecks on the National Register of Historic Places. This is one of them, the Andy Gibson. That's our site plan to date. We've got some more to document in here, but it's very well done. You know, a lot of it done for what we needed to find out about the wreck. But we have historical documentation of this wreck since 1967 or 68. These pictures there, and showing here problems that we run into: ice. Ice flows can just tear apart wrecks, especially in rivers, because they're very dynamic. So you see where this ice is during which we went up there and took a shot, and look at this part of the wreck that is submerged, or not submerged for that matter, when the water's low. So when ice comes by, big problem for us. A couple more shots, old pictures.
Yeah, on the left there, those were taken in the late 60s, 67 or 68. And some well-intentioned locals took out 2 of the 3 rudders.
Back in the 60s, yeah.
And with the intention of putting them on display, but they eventually just ended up on the shoreline and apparently disintegrated there.
They were going to use them in front of a civic building. Aren't these cool? And then they let them rot in a pile.
We find that happens a lot.
Good intentions go because they don't have any money or the knowledge of how to actually go through with those intentions. And actually in 2008, David dealt with this because in his role as the NR archaeologist, a guy decided that this rudder needed to be saved from Andy Gibson. And it's in situ here, and then not in situ here when we started documenting it. So that was like 2006, 2008. And so the rudder he had to pay for it to be conserved and given to the local historical society. But if we could have found a rudder in place, because these other 2 were torn out with good intentions, because you have to save them. Well, they didn't say, this is saved, but it should be on the wreck. So that's what happens. People think they're helping, or they think it's something they can do. I mean, I know how to do this, I'm going to rip this out. No, breaking federal and state law, Abandoned Shipwreck Act and Minnesota's law since 1954. We've got a stronger law than the feds do, which is really great. Another problem we had with Andy Gibson, tree fell on it. So some locals talked to us, and we had the sheriff involved. They had their sheriff's boat, were pulling tree. It was a great effort, a community effort to get the tree off. And Chris and I were in the water, cutting the tree out, fixing damage, or trying to mitigate, but it's another problem we run into. Still in the headwaters of Mississippi River, the Red Mill wreck we think is a Wanigan, which is an unpropelled.
Basically a lumber company support raft for the log drives that they'd have. They could be floating bunkhouses or floating kitchens or both.
Yeah, and so the reason we're adding this is preservation problems. So you look at this picture on the very left here, there's a tree stump or stuck underneath the wreck. So the wreck landed on that tree or it got wedged under that tree and it's forced part of the wreck to come up. So which is bad for the health of the wreck, but actually that's how we found it because the water was low. I walked up and went, huh. And then we got a license and we excavated and there's a wreck. And we thought it might be Walter Taylor, which is a steamboat up there that's wrecked, but we think it's a Wanigan. So Walter Taylor might be next door. Up in the Lake Superior, this is the only wreck we work on in Lake Superior, the Uss Essex, the only naval vessel in Minnesota is a wreck. And that's the guy who built her, or designed her and built her, was Rodney McKay. That's the name of our cat. Donald McKay, who is from Nova Scotia. And he was, if you look him up, he's the premier shipbuilder of the 19th century.
Yeah, you can't open a history book on American merchant history without coming across his name.
Yeah, Donald McKay is the way the Scottish say it. We say McKay. But anyway, this is his last vessel that he actually constructed, along with his sister, the Adams. She's up in the surf zone, as you can see, kind of, in the surf zone, but she doesn't look like that now.
Well, the picture, the upper right picture was taken when in the late 80s when the lake was unusually low. She's normally not that exposed, but it is exposed in other ways.
Yeah, and you see these two timbers here. Somebody felt like they needed to pull them off the wreck and make like near a fire pit. They're using them as seats, like they couldn't use something else. So again, looting wrecks. This is what the wreck looks like uncovered with great sunlight, because it's very shallow, but if you don't have the right sun, hard to see. Just a group of different bits and pieces, but you see it's very exposed. It's 57 feet of wreck here. Well, then when there's ice, that's Chris. You see, that's a big damager to damager, is that a word? Yeah. It causes damage to to our wreck sites is ice. It can go 15 feet down sometimes in Lake Superior, and this is at the shore. So all the ice gets blown into shore. This picture here is me standing there where the Corps of Engineers oftentimes dumps silt from the inner harbor to the outside into the open lake. They know the wreck is there. They do not harm the wreck. They're very good about that. Yay, Corps of Engineers. But and they don't dump directly on it. But the sand it migrates in and covers the wreck. So we went up to look at the wreck, and literally I'm in 6 inches of water or less. That's how filled in it got.
Usually it's about 2 to 4 feet
in the shallow bits, and up to almost 7 feet in the deep bits, because it's almost underwater for me, and I'm just 5'2". So, but then it starts unclearing after a while, and you get this. We went up to document, and you see just the edges of the wreck, and those are Chris's legs, because we oftentimes go on this wreck without fins because you just walk around. So it's starting to uncover. Now that sand movement causes erosion. The water movement causes erosion. It's shallow. Ice causes damage. The keelson's been torn apart in the last decade from ice.
More worn down.
Worn down, and so that's the issues we deal with these shallow sites, especially in summer like Lake Superior. Streetcar steamboat Minnehaha. A lot of people have heard of the Minnehaha. Chris and I actually worked for the Minnesota Transportation Museum that took the custody of the Minnehaha back in the 90s to restore and relaunch her. Restore is a strong word. But in 1980, they raised it from the bottom. Some guys who knew how to do this. These are retired Navy divers who had a salvaging company, which was illegal to salvage things. But if you're putting in a dock, certainly these guys can help you. So anyway, this was a big, they had the portable dredging company had its cranes out there, and this lasted for a few days. And I didn't know about it. I was 14. Chris was 15. So we were living, our lives. We didn't know about this. But if I knew, I probably would have went and screamed at somebody, because I wanted to be an archaeologist back then too. But here's how they're raising the hull of Minnehaha.
They just basically raised it without any plans for what to do with it. Well, first of all, without the proper permits and without any pre-disturbance documentation or anything. And raised it without any plans to conserve it once it got to the surface. And
this picture is particularly, this one and this one, it's tipping. They actually dumped everything that was inside of it out of the hull when they raised her. And she was in about, we're not even sure where she was. We don't know where the site is. That was not even recorded. So we don't know what the site around looked like. When she was raised, say 45 feet, 60 feet, something like that, they raised her to below the surface and then brought her in to where Big Island is, into the shallower water. So they're dragging her through the water column, stuff dumping out, we suspect. It's just a fright. It's for an underwater archaeologist, this is a nightmare. But you see, once she got up, they're shaking each other's hands. Aren't they proud? The TV was in what, was thinking this is a cool thing. No one took into consideration that it was illegal. No, it was completely illegal to do this. This is state property. The state of Minnesota owns the wrecks on the bottoms of rivers that are and lakes in Minnesota that are public. So, and they're taking pictures of how, look what we did, isn't this great? Well, then they let it sit and rot for 10 years. This is 1980, 1990, it's still sitting there. The guys that decided to restore it, it eventually became to the Minnesota Transportation Museum and the Lake Minnetonka Division. For a few years, I actually managed the Lake Minnetonka Division, and Chris was responsible for keeping the steamboat running during the winter, doing all the winter rising and stuff. And he was an engineer, I was a purser. And so it's a nightmare. But these guys had good intentions to restore it. Okay.
However, after sitting for 10 years, they ended up having to replace about 98% of the wood.
Yep, 98% of the wood.
And that's sad.
And they replaced it with old cypress. They did have a source of old cypress.
Or pine, actually.
Was it pine?
Yeah.
I thought the outer hull was cypress.
No.
Okay.
Well, originally.
Yeah, right. Originally, you're right.
Some of the planking they were able, of the outer hull, they were able to save. But
that's right. So the point is, though, why raise it? If the guys that raised it were hoping people come running at them with checks and write out checks for $3 million. That's not how it works. Yeah, it's not a plan. It's a nice, but it doesn't work that way. And so why not just build a replica? They could have built a replica cheaper, faster, and not destroyed an underwater archaeological site that can never be restored again. All the wood they took off of this wreck, they burned, gave away, or chopped it up as souvenirs. The original wood built in from the 1906 build. Nothing. So once they did have it restored, after they made all these mistakes, it's been running since 1996. Chris and I managed it for a few years, but it has, because of COVID, it hasn't run since 2019. Last year, they didn't get it run this year because they're having problems with where to keep the boat. And they don't have any paid staff anymore because we get laid off because they didn't want to have paid staff. And so it's the way it goes. But the poor boat, the replica, we had the plans for this, one of the sisters. So it's not like they didn't have plans. They could have just built a replica. Here's a few of our sisters still on the bottom. So this is what Minnehaha could be. This was the potential that the Minnehaha could be, but they destroyed it. And it
also, people say you got to raise them to save them, but they're still in great shape wherever they are.
Yeah, you don't have to raise to save these. These are doing just fine on the bottom of the lake. So we didn't actually look, people think, oh, you must have dove on these right away when you started to work. No, we did 3 or 4 years it took. Yeah. We know so much about the streetcar boats. Archaeologists do work to answer questions. We don't just do work to do work. So this was like a site assessment more than anything.
Yeah, because the White Bear was actually documented in the mid-90s by the State Archaeology Office. And it was kind of nice because we were able to compare the notes and drawings that they made to what we were finding. And there was one railing that had been pulled off. Yep. Since 95.
Yeah, and we actually repatriated that, back to the state because we had it. Anyway, so there's, right, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So the White Bear, Como, and then there's the Hopkins. And the Hopkins was sunk later than the other, sunk in 1949. Her name was changed to Minnetonka for a while because she's bought by private interest. What's killing us about this is a great wreck. It's still some superstructure, how rare that is.
Even the smokestack is still laying inside.
Yep. And a couple of sonar pictures of her. Can you see that? And it's good we're married, isn't it? Because we're, this is our house. But divers put down a dry suit.
Yeah, they had an old dry suit that they sealed off the openings and made a little scarecrow off the port quarter.
And they anchored it there. to be scary. It lessens the site. It makes it a carnival. And they write in the.
If you want to go to a underwater park or amusement dive site, go to one of the ore pits up north or Square Lake.
Square Lake, yeah. But they were writing in the, because crap gets built up on the outsides of wrecks, and so they wrote Hopkins here. It says doctor, whatever the hell that means. Excuse me, whatever that means. But they're show some respect.
It's kind of tagging.
It's tagging for SCUBA. Anyway, just it's irritating as I'll get out for preservation and just the integrity of the site. Just one last thing about the Minnehaha with the Museum of Lake Minnetonka that currently owns the wreck. We actually kind of helped, or owns the boat. We helped sort of set it up back after we stopped working for the group of volunteers. They really took notice of what we taught the volunteers. This information comes right out of MHM, except they called us Maritime Heritage Museum instead of Minnesota.
And that happens a lot. People get our name confused.
They think we're the Red Wing.
Or they think they also thought that we were the Maritime Art Museum in Winona.
Yeah, that's the one. Or in the Alexandria Museum.
Oh yeah.
Which is a great museum, but it's not us. This is where we work when we're not diving, so it's right out of our house. But this is great. They actually are telling people on the boat, why this shouldn't be done. No, don't ever raise one again, and why. That is point blank right out of MHM, and we know that because 36 wrecks identified in Lake Minnetonka. We're now up to 94 wrecks in Lake Minnetonka. So this is several years old, this data, but they are good for them for paying attention. Okay, shallow phase 2 excavation. We just finished doing this excavation like a week and a half ago. And we can't tell you exactly what's under all this, but we'll hopefully in a month have some more to say. But lures, that's a fishing lure with fishing line. And there's a fishing lure again. How many fishing lines did we run into?
Lots.
It was we were tangled in it. It was in my hand. I gathered up as much as we could and, brought it up to get rid of it because it's just a site for poor fishies. But this poor site got nailed with lures and strings because it's shallow. It's 11 feet deep and it's by a fishing pier. This piece of wood right here, that picture was taken in June, early June. That is now missing from the wreck because a fisherman or fisher person's lure grabbed it and took it away. So that's how much damage. So what we've got here, after we finished doing the documentation, only a phase 2, not a phase 3. So we documented, we took some samples and covered her back up. Under here is the wreck, and we've got total the matrix from the site and rocks, all very carefully on the site. So sandbags, if any more lures or hooks hit her, they're gonna hit sandbags. They're not gonna hit the wreck. So that's good. And so that's why we have to protect these things.
Another example of lure damage. This was a 1890s, 1900s gasoline launch. Actually had a name on it, and the fact that it still had its name told us that we were probably the first ones to find it.
A looter would have taken that off. Yeah.
That's prime looter stuff.
Yeah, on both sides of the bow too. But what's beyond lure damage, where you see Theta, her name is ripped up there. You can see that there's an A. Under the A is white. That's paint. That's
the original paint on the hull, and that was covered up by the name, the little brass plate name.
Yeah.
And apparently a lure got snagged on it and partially pulled away.
Because it's a metal nameplate. And also you'll see, so that's one problem, and we gotta hopefully fix that. But one other problem, look at the thickness of the zebra mussels. This hull is fragmentary, probably sunk pretty intact, but the engine's still on her, everything. But the weight of the zebra mussels, layer and layer and layer of zebra mussels, is destroyed. I cleaned this all up. This is currently cleaned up. I manually cleaned it when we were diving on it. And in here, we're near the end motor, you'll see this is a fishing line. Fishing line is getting caught all over this stuff. So these are just things that happen when you've got underwater sites. Some preventable, some not, but it's what we have to deal with. And this is one of the coolest wrecks in the lake. And if anyone knows where Theta came from, we'd like to know. We don't know who owned her. We don't know when she sank. No information survived in the historical record. So anchor damage.
Yeah, that's a common problem.
Yeah, this is a fiberglass wreck. It's a Larson. And this is not the wreck's anchor. It's actually someone else's anchor that got caught and it grabbed on.
And they pulled so hard that they tilted that boat almost on its side.
Yeah, the wreck is like that now.
And eventually, I guess they gave up and cut their anchor loose.
They cut their line because they couldn't get the anchor loose. And right here, Priscilla, she's in 62 feet of water. Here's her sonar image. These are sonar images, by the way. These are from sonar when we have these strewn around. Here's this actual visual came from the Hennepin County Sheriff who wanted to test out their some of their new equipment. So I gave them the coordinates to this wreck and they went and did some underwater ROV video. There's a Danforth anchor hanging on the rub rail. And of course the rub rail is spring. And so on the wreck, it's about right here on the wreck. This is what she looked like before she sank.
Actually,
is it back here?
back there.
Oh, sorry. He's right. Back here. Not forward, but aft. So that's anchor damage. More anchor damage.
When we see these little oval holes.
That's in a fiberglass wreck.
Yeah.
Clunk.
To the roof of that 55 Mercury.
Yeah. And that's when the Dunk the Clunk, they forgot to take her out with Dunk the Clunker in order. So she went down. She's a 55 Merc, but she probably went down in 68 or so. That's part of the Dunk the Clunk thing. They raise money. And that's a fiberglass Owens. I mean, clunk breaks. Now this is an anchor damage, obviously, but this is a 1936 Plymouth that we found. But when it went down, it went onto its top. So this site is disintegrating on its own. The weight of everything here is going to eventually crush, except for the engine block, basically. It's going to crush the superstructure. The glass windows will probably shatter. That's just the way it goes with something like this, unless we want to mitigate it. And it's not an art, we probably would mitigate this, but that's what she used to look like. So weight of your own heft. This is really great. We just located this wreck this year. And the thing is, we sonared this area years ago, nothing there. We sonared again, 2019, nothing there. We sonared this year. There's a wreck there. Someone only sunk this between the late 2019 and sometime in 2020. It's been there only on the bottom for a year or whatever. But it's not harming anybody. But somehow it got dragged. You see these sonar images. Now, this is the same wreck 3 times. If you can see that. 1, 2, 3. When you turn a corner.
Yeah, strange things happen when you do turns.
When you do sonar, because you can catch something 2 or 3 times. So we knew it was the same wreck, but you look at the drag mark, and it's so fantastic. So when we were diving on it, and one of our volunteers keeps a lift bag with him for safety. He's a firefighter, so he keeps certain things with him.
Not so much a lift bag as a diver down flag that you can.
Right, the same thing. Yeah. We don't, not for lifting artifacts, for showing the surface, just for marking an area. So here's where our diver flag is. Here's where the wreck is, and there is where the drag mark ends. So it goes that far. Yeah. And that's pretty cool.
Roughly measured the skid mark to be about 40 feet long.
Right. So you see, here's the stern of the wreck, and here's the skid mark coming right up to it. We're going to be interested to see how long the skid mark lasts. It'll probably eventually disappear just from the movement of silt. So that's something we can document to preserve, because that's part of the site. This skid mark is just as much part of the site as the wreck. Again, above on your own weight. This wreck, the buried stern wreck in Christmas Lake, great visibility, Christmas Lake. Besides this biotic growth on it isn't great for it either. It's sitting up in the water column. It's not on the bottom of the lake. So it's sitting, and it looks great. That looks kind of cool, but it's going to break her back eventually. It may not take 100 years. It's been down there 80, 100 years already, but breaking the back, there was things we can do to mitigate that. We can pile sandbags underneath her and prop her up. That's something we could do. We haven't done it yet, but it's could be done.
They did something similar with the USS Monitor out off of Cape Hatteras. When they removed the turret, they added sandbags underneath the deck to prop up what the turret was normally supporting. So,
right. It's a common practice, and it's well established to do it in underwater archaeology. This wreck, the wine glass stern wreck 5, and why it's number 5 is because we had 8 or 9 of these things, 10. We had several wine glass stern wrecks. Vegetation. This is the stern to inside of the transom. That's the outside of the transom. It's wine glass inside of the hull. It's held together by roots of biotic growth. I mean, if this stuff dies and falls off or gets picked off, this thing's probably falling apart. The nails are probably still there, but the wood is probably so soft and degraded. Without this vegetation, we wouldn't have a wreck. So we're crossing our fingers that it stays put. So it's it's very interesting. It doesn't happen all the time, but this one is just intertwined and held together by the vegetation. Other wrecks that are in the water column, we just showed you that one from Christmas Lake, but we've got others, and being in the water column can be detrimental to your health depending on how deep you are or what you're made of. This wreck is fiberglass, and it's in an area that's it's only about 25 feet deep, but nothing's going to bother this. It's fiberglass. Fiberglass is strong. It's like aluminum, so Alumacraft, again standing straight up in the water column, but it's in 60 feet of water, so no problem there. This wreck, also fiberglass, shallower water, and it's sitting up like that because of the weight of it. It's inboard, outboard, and it's shallower water, but in general, okay. It's nothing's going to happen to that. It's fiberglass, so that's good. It's under its own weight, probably be fine. This is aluminum; it won't rust, so we're probably pretty good with those. A couple of others, straight up off the bottom.
First Chris craft we found on Lake Minnetonka is standing straight up and down.
In 72 feet of water, 20 feet of her is sticking out of the silt. Here she is. So this is 55, 60 feet of water where this picture is taken. We used an ROV for this. And she looks like this. She's a stinger, which is the same kind of, the Miami Vice guys used a 36-foot stinger. We've got a 26-foot stinger. If you're old enough like us, because we're old, to remember Miami Vice. But this might be a problem. There's things flinging around on her. Her anchor is deployed. She's got a cover on her that she must have been being towed or something when she sank. So this one's kind of worrisome. It might be a little more fragile than not the wreck itself, but the innards of the wreck seem kind of fragile. So
yeah, it has its canopy still in place, and you know that might tear off on its own someday.
So this other one, the Larson All-American, this is a great sonar image. You can even see her windscreen. You can see her seats, and she's up off the bottom here. We've documented one by 3D scanning at a museum, which we'll show you later. This is what she used to look like. So she's up the weight of her motor, but she is less than 20 feet deep before you hit the bow. That's scary for anyone with an anchor. Or anyone with a nice big wake and big prop wash. I mean, it's worrisome.
It's a little amazing that's been able to stand up on its end for all these years.
On a hill. So then we've got the glass dome wreck. That's in Prior Lake. So again, up, not too scary, but shallow. You can see she's only 26 feet of water. And we have a couple of cars in Medicine Lake. They'll eventually rust because they're not stainless steel and probably fall. But
the last one's kind of an example of why we don't want to disturb even what may seem like junk on the bottom, because there was a beer can that helped date the wreck event.
Yep, a Budweiser from 1968, and that's perfect for when this sank. Yeah. There's the professor who likes beer cans I contacted.
And the 64 Rambler, really should find out what they've used for paint on that, because there's no rust throughs on that.
Yeah, and another thing that happens is scuba divers tie buoys to wrecks, and then that can be caught. Look at this one. The Minneapolis is down 75 feet deep, and it's a wreck by every stretch. But look at where the buoy comes way up, and it's this buoy right here. That's not good. We don't want that. And there's this one on the National Register, the wreck that David mentioned. This is the Wayzata Bay Rack, a model barge. It's got old divers used to use Clorox bottles so they could find wrecks because they didn't have sonar. And so that's not a great thing. And this one too.
They'd use landmarks to locate a wreck that they had found, or so they could go back to it. Then they'd dive down and release the buoy up for other divers to come down on.
But George Excelsior's got a buoy, but the problem with this is it goes so close to the surface. Zebra mussels are grabbing onto that buoy and they're working their way down and they're acclimating. They're supposed to die at under 40 feet or below, but they're actually alive at 62 feet. So they're not quagga mussels, so they're adapting. That's not good, and this buoy's helping them.
Yeah, and also one thing on the Wayzata Bay Rack here, there is an anchor strike there too.
Yeah. So Big Island, we also do some terrestrial archaeology at Lake Minnetonka. We're going to quickly whiz through this because we only have a few minutes. That's a LiDAR image that we use, which is really great. But all of this is archaeology on Big Island, whether it be from the amusement park, not the Excelsior Amusement Park. Big Island had an amusement park before that, or the Veterans Camp was there, or the game farm that was there over the years, and camping and things. So what we've shown is we did some work in 2008 with a group of kids, 2007, excuse me, with a group of kids. And this plinth is really great looking. This is what it looked like in 2019, just from vandals, just from people destroying. loot, and they're not looting for, hey, let's take this, it's fun. They destroyed it, probably shooting at it. I don't know. I mean, but look at the,
It was just for something to do.
they just broke it to pieces for no reason. And down here is just one. This is what in situ. This is what a natural fall looks like of a pillar, a broken pillar. And this is, we did 3D scanning. We have iPads with 3D scanners on them. So we 3D scanned a lot of all of the features out there. And just to do a quick thing, there's two kitchens out there. They look like this. This is the pile of the foundations of one of the kitchens that was only ripped up in the 70s because this building survived until the 50s, 60s. This building, which has a fish shack on it from when it was a veterans camp, its foundation is in situ. We still have the foundation of a kitchen, look just like that. But for some reason, they decided to rip it up and breaking up this archaeological feature for no reason. So this is just cool. This is our 3D image of where the water ride was, like the one that's at the state fair, and a bathroom that was reused in the game farm. And the LiDAR, you can actually see the figure 8 of the roller coaster that's next door right here. So that's kind of cool. This is how we preserve it. For us, 3D scanning this stuff is preserving it, because right now they've changed into a park that's being opened on Friday, or a week from Friday, as a grand opening thing that we've been invited to. Women's dorm, this had graffiti on it, and we cleaned it up. But now that we've got these 3D images, we can see what happens in the future to her, to it. The reuse.
And these, one of the more common relics of the amusement park are these lamppost spaces, and a number of them were converted to barbecue stands during the veterans camp era.
So, but what's great about that is they left a lot of them intact too, where the light lampposts used to come out. And so, and they left these ones this is the same one in 2 views of the 3D scan, just complete as all get out. This is where all the wiring went, done for infrastructure basically. So the reuse is neat. These archaeological things are neat as long as they're left in situ. This is a real shame. This is how we documented this. It's a sewer trap. It's a silt trap for a building sewer for runoff. And we had it just great. I climbed in there and did the inside as best we could with our 3D scanning. Looks great. Well, and we covered it in branches, but some guys or people some weekend came and moved our branches and tossed around all of that concrete bits of this that were in situ since 1911, since it was built. And they just threw it all over the place for no reason. And we're so annoyed. And we did call the Hennepin County Sheriff's Water Patrol one day because there were guys with shovels, metal detectors looting the island while we were working. And then we said, you can't do that. This is archaeology. They didn't care, kept on digging. So they then left before the sheriff got there. But we recorded all of the potholes that they shoveled, looking for metal, looking for trinkets, and basically stealing artifacts. So what's great about this, these are the veterans camp that began in the 19-teens for veterans of World War I. This is then they reused steps and things from the old amusement park. So
they used a lot of the clay brick for foundation stones.
Yeah, the brick that was all around, they reused. So they reused archaeological artifacts because it wasn't technically archaeological yet. But those, now we've got these foundations and know what they used to look like by doing research, because none of these buildings survived. They only tore this one down about a decade ago. I wish they kept it, but they tore it down. So that's kind of neat. And other things we do, beyond diving, we do document rare Minnesota watercraft. And these are all the dugout canoes we've documented in Minnesota so far. And we won a American Association for State and Local History Award of Merit for these projects, which is kind of cool. And thanks to David Mather and various other people who suggested we go to get that, which is neat. And these are all taken out of Minnesota lakes or rivers, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not. The oldest to date to around 1,000 years old, roughly. And there's some that are 550 years old, that sort of thing. So radiocarbon dating of these has turned out really well. But we've given suggestions to the different museums that have these on how to conserve them, and they've taken them to heart. You can see right here, this is a glass case where it wasn't before. And this is a new exhibit of this one. It turned out to be 550 years old.
Yeah, it was originally thought to have been built in the 1930s.
By Ole Torgerson, who died in 1917.
Yeah,
So,
that would have been a problem.
so other small craft projects. We just finished our 5th one where we 3D scan rare Minnesota watercraft. Some that are parts of outdoor sculptures, which is ouch. There's a very rare nice Larson disintegrating as we speak. But when we 3D scan these from museums and private collections, we can then use these as models for us to document underwater sites and to recognize attributes of underwater sites. And we save these vessels in 3D. You can print 3D models. We actually have a couple back here that one of our volunteers printed of one of the vessels that we 3D scanned. So that's why we do these all Minnesota built, all Minnesota used vessels. Except for one was used in Wisconsin, but built in St. Paul. And all this is on our website. So this one particularly interesting, the oldest plank boat in Minnesota that's above the water that we know exists, built in 1858 by a guy who went off into the Civil War and died. So a veteran is a casualty of the Civil War. And that's
really interesting too, because it's got basically 3 branches for frames.
Yep, and we've run into that one other time with one on a wreck in Prior Lake. And I've seen it, in other wrecks around the world too. It's really interesting. So that's a super, super cool old boat. Some more of the Onaway, and we've done Birchbark canoes. What's great is this Birchbark canoe. We know who built it. It's John Bluestone. I can't say his Indian name, Native American name, so his real name I won't say it because I'll butcher it. But a Mendota tribe, and he's a Dakota Native American living in Mendota. And this one's an Ojibwe from northern Minnesota. And so we're also interested, these, in perpetuity, we can use these, how are they constructed? People can use these models to build their own if they want to. And again, flat bottom boats, small boats, fiberglass herders. Yay, herders. We have one on the bottom of the lake even in Lake Minnetonka. So that's a dingle from St. Paul. That's a Indian trading post company boat from Lake Mille. So that's done with what we're going to show you. We can't, even though this has nothing to do with preservation except the preservation of our lives. If you're a boater, remember the diver down flag takes precedence wherever you are, 150 feet around that flag, all the flags. We usually display at least 2. You can't go in that area. A lot of people do because propellers can cut our heads off. It's state law.
Yes, learn to respect the diver down flag for the love of God.
Preaching to a choir here, I'm sure. So that's what they look like, red with the white stripe. But we get so many people, what's that red flag mean? They think we're in trouble. No, it means stay away. I've got a megaphone now, actually, to yell at people. So anyway, respect the dive flag. And that's our website. You can email us. You can get on our website. We do have a YouTube channel. Very far behind in putting up video on YouTube. But all of the YouTube video that we do or that our volunteers do is linked to our website. So once it is up, I do link it. There's a drop down menu for the different, we do it by body of water. So you can go look at videos. All of our videos don't go up for various reasons, but for a lot of times it's bad visibility. You can't see anything. But for the videos that you can discern stuff, we put those up. And that's basically it. We're done. If I have to give up being the head or something of this.
No, you can keep control of you can still be the host at the very end of our session. If you would just click off the recording, since I can't do that anymore.
Stop it now.
So thank you so much. This was so much great information. We do have time for questions, and so let me get to the right box here so I can see if there are any.
I'll go to chat as well here.
Yeah, so they'll be in the Q&A section, which is separate from the chat.
Oh, okay.
So yes. Any attendees, if you have questions, type them in there. I will read them to Ann and Chris so that they'll be, otherwise people watching the recording won't be able to see the questions. And we'll see how that goes. I have while we're waiting to see if others have questions, I have a question. I was really intrigued about is it 3 of the streetcar steamboat wrecks? So the Como, White Bear, and then the Hopkins / Minnetonka. Yeah, so the Minnehaha was, it's either just listed in the register as a structure, the raised and then restored vessel, and so and that it's either just listed or it's about to be. It's gone through the state review board process. I think it would be a really useful, complementary listing to get to the either one or even all three of those wrecks to help protect them in the future as sites. And anyway, I'm very intrigued by that possibility.
Yeah, those sites are great. I mean, I thought the Minnehaha had too much not original equipment to actually be nominated. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion. I wasn't directly involved in it, but from my understanding from my National Register colleagues they discussed it with the National Register staff in DC because it's a very interesting challenge for integrity.
Okay.
And I think my understanding of what they learned is that, for a working vessel, the fabric is replaced through routine maintenance, and so in this case, since they were replacing like with like, for a floating vessel, it's considered to still have integrity, even though the wood of this part or whatever part is not the same wood as it originally was. And I don't know, that make as a non-specialist in that subject, it makes sense to me. But I as an archaeologist, I would really love to see the either one, two, or all three of the ones that are still intact sites listed as well. I think altogether they warrant that same level of historical recognition, and I think it creates a really good teaching opportunity, which you've been doing. So I appreciate that.
Oh, that's cool, because they were public transportation, and they were as an extension of the streetcar line. A lot of people don't know that. That's why they were called streetcar boats, because they look like trolleys. What's interesting, and what would help with this is I was going to mention this as we talked. We are now going to be doing underwater photogrammetry. We've started with this project on Lake Minnetonka that we are just writing up now. We don't know how good we're going to be at it yet, but we're going to try, because we do pretty good with scanning above water. But we do have the proper computer and program that was actually money donated to us by Dr. Natalie Rosen to buy the computer, and money from your Aunt Artie and Jack actually paid for the software. So we got these donated funds, and so we're going to start plugging that data into the program to build our 3D model on a couple of the wrecks that we have done. Those would be perfect candidates for something like that, especially the Hopkins, because saving those in 3D, and I know the Great Lakes Shipwreck Preservation Society guys, or some guys associated with them, have done the Hopkins already in photogrammetry.
Oh, yeah.
I think so, yeah. It's an okay model. I don't know if they've improved on it. It's all right. They were doing some trial and error stuff. Ken Merriman, I think, was doing that. Not related to me. Merriman with a Y, not an I. We're not related. But anyway, so that would be one. That's something that is very possible for the future as a goal. Yeah. Oh.
Awesome. I think I see a question. Let's see. Okay, this is from Trish Short Lewis from Kitson County near Pembina.
Yeah, I got an email from her, yeah.
Okay, recently the steamboat Dakota was found partly on North Dakota side and partly on Minnesota side. We let historical societies know an interest was expressed to properly document it 2 to 3 weeks ago. And then Trish is asking, who can we ask? Do you mean Trish, who can you ask to do the documentation? And so that's a really exciting find, I would say. If if you have not already, I think the Minnesota Historical and Cultural Heritage Grants Program at the Minnesota Historical Society would be a great source for funding for a project like that. And then you could hire underwater archaeologists to do that work, as well as to, with a later grant to do a National Register evaluation and maybe even a nomination if it's eligible. But that sounds like an exciting find. I like that.
Well, she contacted the OSA, and OSA forwarded her email to us. So I have
Great.
Trish. I did respond an email about how you would do this project. If you did do it, you'd have to have qualified people, what licenses you need, because it is across the state lines. As far as Minnesota, I can't speak for North Dakota or South Dakota. I can't speak for the Dakotas at all. I can speak for Minnesota as far as how we do things underwater. And we are the only underwater archaeologists that are qualified to do that kind of work in the state, but we don't have a pot of money that's just waiting for us to use to go run and do a project, in 2 weeks. We got to write grants and get funded. So the fact that, because we're not state workers, we are running a private nonprofit. And so we can't run up and document the Minnesota side of that wreck on short notice like this. Someone has to fund it, whether it's we writing grants or someone else writing grants. So that means the Minnesota part cannot be worked on by someone from the Dakotas. You can't cross unless they get a license from the OSA, and that's up to the OSA. That has nothing to do with us. So that's where it sits. And I know the water's low now, and that's why they want it looked at. I get that, but
I see.
You know what I mean? It's just like with the Andy Gibson, David. You got to be able to you have money to plan a project. You can't just run off and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 other projects right now, so we can't.
Yeah.
But that's the question I think that one.
Yeah. So the county historical societies, like Kitson County, if they wanted to do so, could write a grant to do this. And Trish is saying we reported it. Yeah, and they realize funding is an issue. Yeah, so Trish, I'd be happy to talk to you about this offline too, and maybe I mean there might be a way to have someone just come look at it.
Because I did respond to Trish, and maybe she didn't get my email. I very long email, so I don't know.
Okay.
So
We'll figure it out. But anyway,
right.
Trish, thank you. That's a really interesting thing, and I want to learn more about it. So
I can forward stuff to you, David.
Yeah, great.
I'll forward everything we have on it.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions from audience? I have another one myself. I'm going to hog the questions unless somebody else is going to jump in here. I think at the beginning of your case studies, you talked about the Andy Gibson and then some other work you've been doing around that site or near that site. Is it, if I remember right, there's like kind of a historical landing there. Is it all related to that, or is it more things?
It's all related to each other. Where the Gibson sank was a landing. It was moored, and they built a cradle underneath her to keep her from which is very interesting. That's also unique in underwater archaeology.
And also where that Wanigan is located, that's a landing as well.
For the company, for the
Red Mill
landing, yeah. And lumber company. And over there's also the Swan, which is a wreck that we monitor and look at. That's only about 200 yards from the Wanigan? Not even? Yeah.
50 yards.
Very close. Oh, so far than that. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, it's down by the mouth of the Ripple River. So you got, in between those, we got an archaeological site number for the Hodgdon Mill. It's owned by a couple of different people. So there's a mill site that we've recognized. And Fred, who does industrial archaeology, he actually has been doing industrial work up on a site there. So it's basically an industrial archaeologist and underwater archaeologist dream right there.
Nice.
Fred is interested in it being a national district. historic district.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
We've talked about this in the past, and it could very well be that. Because there's currently 3 wrecks, and we think there's a 4th. We think there's a brick scatter that might be part of the boiler system, firebox system of the Walter Taylor. Because when we found the Wanagan, we thought that was actually Walter Taylor, but the construction characteristics do not suggest that at all. It suggests a Wanagan. So we may have 3 named wrecks: the Swan, the Walter Taylor, and the Andy Gibson, and a Wanagan, all within less than 2 miles, plus the Mille, plus this other. So it's just an incredible amount of, because they used those landings from into Aiken. They didn't have railroads at that point going across the country. So they used, or going north-south anyway. So they used the river. So it's a fantastic number of different sites around there. And we've only scratched the surface with the Mille even. It was just a big, surface phase 1 deal. So
Nice. That's fascinating. And for the audience, I'm remembering, way back now when we were working on the Andy Gibson, the context of that I thought was so interesting, because if I'm remembering right, there was like this short window of time when the railroad got to Aiken, and then but that was the end of the line basically. And so this landing with these steamboats worked the relatively short stretch of the river up to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
So was that like
Aiken
10 or 20 years or something like that?
It was 106 miles of windy river, 106 miles.
Okay, yeah. And then eventually the railroad got connected to Grand Rapids, and there wasn't, then that essentially ended the need for this,
About 1920, right, Chris? 1920?
Around 1920? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I love that little snapshot.
1870 to 1920 was the steamboat era of the headwaters Mississippi River between Aiken and Grand Rapids.
And there were about a dozen steamboats that operated, but there were like at the most 3 at one time.
Because they couldn't pass each other in the river because it was too narrow. So and Gibson was a behemoth, 140 feet long, way too big. Would undercut corners and various things. So they had to kind of plan their deals. If the water was high, they're doing much better, but if the water was low, they could not work.
Log drives were a hazard too.
Logs everywhere. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a 50-year snapshot. Yeah, you're right. It is.
That's really cool. And I remember from back then that the Aiken County Historical Society has quite a bit of information about the area and the ships, and I think even like some of the log books from
Andy Gibson and Fawn. They have Fawn's log books.
And I think Walter Taylor had a small.
Oh, that's right.
Walter Taylor's. That's not a complete log book, but at least maybe 1 month or so.
The family whose ancestors own the Walter Taylor have them in their possession. Have the full ones in their possession, but they haven't been talked into giving them up yet. But we could digitize those. That'd be great. So there's that. The information is a lot of it's there. It talks about cargo and people that are in these books. So it's a great history up there like you said, a 50-year snapshot of, steamboats into 1915, 1920. The Lee was in the river for a long time. So
that is really cool. I'm going to scroll down and see. We don't have any other questions. We got 7 minutes left. Any last thoughts to add? Or?
Well, we're going to be what we're doing, finishing up Lake Minnetonka project. It's like our millionth Lake Minnetonka, 94 wrecks so far. Wow. And so we will hit 100 probably, but not this year. We are then starting, we didn't get funding. We wanted to go diving in lakes that we saw last year, but we didn't get the funding for that. But we did secure some funding by a longtime donor to start sonar scanning bits of Lake Mille Lacs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Mille Lacs Lake. The permit is under review right now, or the license with the OSA. And we're going to do some of the different bays, because we're not going in the middle of the lake. But we're doing chunks of the different bays around the east, west, and southern ends of the lake in discrete chunks, because we kind of know how much we get done on a day, because we've been doing this a while, how many transects you can do and stuff. So we'll start with that, and we've got funding for that for 2 years. So
Nice.
we can work when we can on that for the next couple of years, like because we're going to just take the boat and run up there, so on. But we've got the funding secured, so that's always great. So we're starting that, and then the winter we'll do another. Hopefully, cross our fingers if funding comes through. Do another small boat project. You know, we want to digitize Jerry Speece's boat that he took across the Atlantic. At the Pacific too. Yeah, that's right. At the MNHS, the Yankee Girl. That's our next target for 3D scanning. And we're going to try photogrammetry and 3D with our iPads. And there's one other boat, maybe in Waukon, that we want to try out our new photogrammetry system on. So those boats, and and that's a dingle. That's a dingle boat. Dingle was from St. Paul. So that's what we're working on. We're hoping to get funds for that. So
that's very exciting. At Mille Lacs, it might be worth looking around those two rock islands, Hennepin Island and Spirit Island. They're both like basically piles of glacial boulders, and then they stick out above, and anyway, it gets shallow right around there. That I don't know if there's. I've been out there in a canoe, and you can see the boulder pavement. I don't know if anything else is there or not, but
fishing excursions used to go out to Spirit Island like little ducklings, like they're chained a bunch of boats together and they go fishing. Spirit Island is outside the purview of this because it's so far out in the lake. We're doing this stuff, but Hennepin Island is within, because that's near Isle. That's in the Isle Harbor. They are just outside Isle Harbor. So no, we're going to be doing that this year. We've got about 12,000 acres. We can't. It's 12,000 for perspective. 12,000 acres is 2,000 acres less than Lake Minnetonka is, but Mille Lacs is 132,000 acres. So 12,000 is just a small chunk, and
do what we can.
And we know what our boat is big. It's 18.5 feet. It's not 30 feet. And we've dealt with winds on Mille Lacs. We know Mille Lacs. We used to stay on the cabin when we did projects up there, family cabin, and the winds are there. It's wow.
Like stiff.
So we're not going to bite off more than we can chew as far as safety. So yet.
Yeah. Right on. So, that's very exciting. I like it. Good. Okay. Well, I think we're basically at time, so I want to say thank you so much. This has been just really fantastic. Comments from audience. Thank you for a great presentation. Same here. And we look forward to learning in the future what new submerged resources have been identified. Before I forget, as we're signing off, could you click off the recording button, and then I think everyone should, once the process, should get a link to the video. So. And
I can get out of. I won't be the leader anymore. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the conference.
Stop. Okay.